Wednesday edition of PFT OT. That's the program that we do after PFT Live goes off the air. Things that we either didn't get to or things we would like to talk some more about. And it was a three-man weave edition of PFT Live today. So now it's down to just two. We got rid of Big Cat. He was leaving anyway. It's down to me and Chris Simms, and we're going to delve into some of the things we talked about earlier, including the issue that, Chris, we've been ahead of the curve on this. I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but let me pat ourselves on the back.
Yes.
We've been making people aware that there's something up with the Seahawks and Russell Wilson. And Wilson now says he wants his contract by April 15. He's made it clear via his visit to Jimmy Fallon he wants to be the highest paid player in football. So if you're the Seahawks, what do you do about this?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this would be something, again, I don't expect anything to be done by April 15th. Do you? I mean, I don't think that's even realistic at this point. It doesn't sound like, I feel like we would have heard rumors that things were, farther down the road as far as contract talks and things like that. So I have no idea where they're at. But if I'm the Seattle Seahawks, I'm trying to get this done this offseason. I am. Russell Wilson, without question, the most famous, most notable player in the history of the Seattle Seahawks. Russell Wilson, without question, is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football. And I just think if I'm the Seattle Seahawks, I don't let a talent like that out the door. And I would try to find a way right now, hey, fine. If you got to make him the highest paid quarterback in football right now, that's all fine and dandy. I think with the way the salary cap's going, right, Mike, and everything there, okay, you're the richest quarterback this year. 3 years from now, it will be, the 10th highest paid quarterback in football. And I think that will help out the Seattle Seahawks and the long-term prospects of their football team to kind of get out ahead of this.
I really think what's gone on is this, and I'm going to explore whether or not this theory has any merit once we finish up today, but I think that the Seahawks have been trying to get him to sign a long-term deal. He's been resisting it, and eventually he said, all right, here's what it's going to be. I want to be the highest paid player in football, and it's got to be done by April 15. Otherwise, no long-term deal. I think he wants to do the Kirk Cousins 1 year at a time because he knows at some point he forces his way to the open market. And if the Seahawks want to sign him on the open market, so be it. They can. But this is a way to bring some of that NBA attitude into the NFL. We've seen it with Kirk Cousins. We've seen it with Antonio Brown, and we may be seeing it with Russell Wilson. And I know it's out of character, but just the fact that there would be a story that he's given them this deadline, this artificial deadline of April 15 for a long-term contract, that's out of character.
Yeah.
So, hey, he's 30 now. He's got other issues he's considering. He's made a certain amount of money. He sees how much more he can make, and he knows there's a finite number of years that he can make it.
Right.
Now's the time to shake as much as you can out of the trees. And I think one way or the other, he's going to make $34 million over the next 4 years, and it's either going to be as part of a long-term contract, Chris, or it's going to be franchise tag 2020, franchise tag 2021, and if the Seahawks are willing to do it, $52.4 million for the franchise tag in 2022.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, is it that out of character? I was just going to say, too, because he is a guy that seems pretty straightforward, business-oriented, understands the full scope of the league. He always kind of threatens about this, I'm going to go play baseball for a week with the New York Yankees.
But he never says he's going to play baseball full-time.
Yes, you're right. You're right. He never says
This is the first time he has deviated in any way from the carefully manicured Go Hawks image, and that was the way that they would do it in the locker room behind his back when, the rough and tumble guys were there, and resented the fact that he was kind of management among them. And now that they've built the team around him, it's even more imperative that they keep him. That he's got a ton of leverage here. I mean, a ton.
A ton.
And they're either going to pay him Aaron Rodgers plus, or they're going to be paying him over the next 4 years the same amount, and then they may not have him after the next 3 or 4 years go by. All right. Aaron Rodgers plays for the Packers, was coached by Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy not happy with the way things ended in Green Bay. And I'm a big believer in this, Chris. If you believe you were not treated fairly, let others make that case for you. Don't make it for yourself. It's hard to generate sympathy if it looks like you're whining. And the way that I read this article as it relates to how he was fired, his complaints about the how, it couldn't have been handled any worse. Yes, it could have been handled worse. It could have been handled much worse. And I know stories of exit interviews gone horribly wrong between employer and employee. He's unhappy that there wasn't enough emotion involved in it. What are they supposed to do, break down crying? It's over. It's done. You're still getting paid for the rest of this year and at least all of next year. I don't understand why he's choosing to try to make himself seem sympathetic. That's not for him to do, and it's just odd that he's still holding that grudge 3.5 months after the fact.
Yeah, no, it is odd. I mean, for a guy who won this, has won a Super Bowl and played in a lot of big games, first of all, I do agree with you. Like, you shouldn't be the one to come out and complain in these type of instances. I don't think it's good for the Mike McCarthy business. Again, if future employers are going to these are things that I don't think are necessarily going to rub them the right way. Even the comments about Aaron Rodgers, he better be careful because other quarterbacks, players, if he's a little too mean in those comments or indicting somebody for their actions, that's not going to make anybody feel comfortable if he becomes a new head coach of their football team either. But let's not forget the optics of this situation. I mean, they lost at home to the Arizona Cardinals, the team that has the #1 pick in the draft, okay? The worst team in football, went up to Green Bay in December with a rookie quarterback and beat Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. And yes, Mike McCarthy might not like how it went down and didn't show emotion, but I think that was just the final nail in the coffin. I think that the Green Bay Packers brass already was probably going, I think we're going to move on from from Mike McCarthy here. And when you lose in that fashion at home to one of the worst teams in football, that'll speed up the process. And yes, Mike McCarthy's a good football coach. My issues with him on the offensive side of the ball. And hey, this is business. It's part of football. And for some reason, coaches, especially coaches that are established, I know I said this on TV, Mike, they feel like they get the right to end a season or get to finish what they started. And I think that's a little hypocritical because there's, of course, a lot of players in the NFL who don't get that right on a yearly basis.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. They fire players all the time, and most players don't have guaranteed contracts beyond the moment they're fired. Coaches do.
That's
Mike McCarthy's going to be paid for all of 2019, and then he'll try to get back into the coaching hiring process when 2020 rolls around. And I just look, I think that he got a lot more leeway than any other coach ever would have gotten. He didn't get the most out of Aaron Rodgers over the course of his time there. Yes, they won a Super Bowl, but that absence of an owner who can fire you whenever he or she chooses to do so does create a complacent environment, or an environment that is more apt to be complacent. It's more important to fight to avoid complacency when you know that there isn't that billionaire lurking the halls who can hand out pink slips whenever he or she chooses to do so.
Yeah.
All right. There was a billionaire who was lurking the halls of the Alliance of American Football, and we thought Tom Dundon was committed to multiple years of putting the money in necessary to try to make the thing profitable, and he has decided after only about 6 weeks, Chris, he's done. The AAF is done. The AAF is gone. The XFL arrives next year. We have seen alternate football. We have seen spring football leagues fail over the years. Can it ever work, and is the XFL, in your opinion, something that would work much better than the AAF did?
I don't think it can work. I don't think the XFL, it might have better success than the AAF, but I don't think it's going to necessarily work. It might hang around for, 2-3 years maybe at its best. But no, for me, a guy that loves football, first of all, the NFL is all there is to me when it comes to football. It's the best athletes in our country, maybe the best athletes in the world, all competing against each other. You get the best coaches also involved in that conversation. So you're taking a notch down as far as the talent level, the coaching experience, the ideas, all those things that go with it. So that gets me there. And, hey, honestly, spring football in college in the South, that's still king. And the biggest thing with any of these startup leagues, and I've said this a lot, is there's just no star power. Like the USFL back in the 80s had a chance because they paid some of the guys who were going to be top 10 draft picks enough money to sway them to leave the NFL and come play in the USFL. And that's why it created some buzz. I know ultimately it went bankrupt, it didn't work. But that to me is where the big issue is, Mike. We watch college football because we see greatness on the field at times. We see Saquon Barkley playing on Penn State versus, a bunch of college kids, and we go, wow, that was amazing. Look at these amazing things. We see Kyler Murray, who we think is going to be a star in the NFL, dominate certain games in college football, and that's why we tune in. We tune in to see the greatness of those players and some of those coaches, and that goes for the NFL, and that's where I look at the XFL or the AAF and just think they have major issues there.
You need star players. You need players with name recognition. And the idea of getting players on loan from the NFL makes sense as long as it's players we care about. And that's the problem. If you want to help your backup quarterback develop and you put him on loan to the XFL, okay, fine, he may develop, but he also may get injured, and then you're screwed and you don't have a backup quarterback.
That's
so
right.
It's a very fine line for the NFL, and the question is, can you attract talent that will forego playing in the NFL? That's what I think the XFL is going to do. They're going to target guys who get cut on Labor Day weekend, and they would otherwise be the third-string quarterback or the fourth-string quarterback, get those guys to commit to the XFL. They're not available for that roster churning that we see when guys get signed and released and guys get injured, and that's a way for the XFL to get some decent players with NFL reps. But that still doesn't mean we're going to care. Like, are we going to care about Luke Falk and David Fales in the XFL?
No.
I don't know what it's going to take to resonate. They almost really do have to revolutionize the game.
Yes, they do.
And whether whether that, and one thing about the AAF, like these games that were 13-9, who cares?
Right.
They need to have games that land in the 30 to 40 point range per team every game, and it needs to feel like it's moving fast. It needs to be exciting. Your offenses need to click. And the offenses have a hard time catching up with defenses. And if the defenses are ahead of the curve, these games are not going to be exciting, Chris.
No, exactly right. I think you made a lot of good points, and I think that's it. I mean, what can the WWF or the XFL bring to the table that's going to attract the fans on a weekly basis? And you said it. I think they're going to have to find some style of play or some, I don't want to say gimmick, but that's the word I'll use for lack of a better phrase, that's going to get people interested to watch the game, to go, ooh, that's different. Like, this is kind of neat how they're playing. I don't know what that is, but they're going to have to find a different angle. It can't be like the AAF where, it's bland offensive play, bland defensive play, and there's no exciting football players on the field. And like you said, every game looked the same. It was always 13-9, 16-10, 17-7. It just there's just nothing that allured me to it on a weekly basis.
All right, I'm going to skip a topic that we were planning to discuss. We talked about it during the show. This was the Jim Irsay 3 Super Bowls in a row. I don't know what more to say about that other than, Jim, what the hell are you doing?
Let's just win one first. Let's just stay there. Let's just go one
Let's try to get one.
Yes.
Let's not have a goal that no one has ever achieved ever before in the history of the sport, at least in the Super Bowl era. But I'm skipping it for an important reason. I have an update on Russell Wilson that we'll get to after we get to our next topic. Here is what I want. It's a little. I'm holding the audience in place to the extent that they're even watching this, and I think some of them do. Here's one that I want to get to before we get to Russell Wilson, and this relates to Derek Carr. We talked during the show about the Raiders' tweet of Kyler Murray with Tim Brown on their official account on the day they did the private workout with Kyler Murray. The Derek Carr response with the Robert De Niro, I'm watching you, Fokker gesture, and Derek Carr clearly not happy with what's going on. If Derek Carr called you today and said, Chris, I know you dealt with John Gruden for multiple years in Tampa Bay. You know what makes the guy tick. You've had other quarterbacks drafted, signed, acquired. Tell me what I should do about this situation. What advice would you give Derek Carr?
My advice would be, hey, listen, John Gruden's, he's passionate about football. You're going to learn a lot of good things, Derek Carr. But the big thing is here, you can't also let John Gruden bother you, Derek Carr. You got to block out some of the noise. And when he's talking about quarterbacks and how other quarterbacks are so great, excuse me, and his eye fancies some of the young quarterbacks coming out in the draft. And obviously, he has a fascination with Kyler Murray. He's been talking pretty highly about him ever since the combine, really. And, of course, he works him out. So my advice to Derek Carr would be, don't let those things bother you. And don't let John Gruden or the Oakland Raiders show that they bother you. You know, one of the things we need, Derek Carr, everybody questions, is the thickness of his skin. Can he handle a John Gruden? Well, this is a litmus test in that area. And also, what happens, and I almost fell down this little tunnel myself when I played for John Gruden, when you start to let him bother you, it starts to take away from what you do on the field. And that's the big thing. When you start thinking, oh, this bastard, he's going to bring in another quarterback. He's not giving me enough reps. You know, what a jerk. Can't believe he talked to me like that in the meeting. I found myself, those were days where I didn't have a good day of practice, or I wasn't at my best because I wasn't focused on the job at hand. And all he can do is worry about himself, his play, where he is at physically, and that's where he should go. And just do your best to block the noise. The hell, Derek Carr is showing that he pays attention to the media a little too much with stuff like this, with he wanted to box somebody, right, in ESPN because they were saying wrong things or whatever it may be. He's showing that the criticism or the questions get to him, and I don't think that's necessarily a good look for him. So for me, I would just block it out and kind of get off the radar, Derek Carr.
And is there any merit to the idea that if you're going to survive the fray of a professional football game, that you got to be able to deal with this crap?
Yes.
I mean, is it helpful? Does it thicken your skin, or is it a distraction?
No.
Which way do you fall on that?
Yeah, no, I think it's helpful. I think it's another test where you can put the pelt on the horse, as you and I say, and you can go.
I don't say that.
another obstacle that I've overcome, and I continued to stay focused and had the tunnel vision to not be distracted by the outside noise. That's what being a quarterback is in the NFL. Hey, of course you want to self-motivate. He's not going to forget that Gruden flirted with other quarterbacks, but his goal should really be, I'm going to play so good that this John Gruden's got to keep me. I'm going to be a starting quarterback, and I'm going to play so good that I'm going to take jabs at him for looking at other dumb quarterbacks that I didn't think were worthy of what I am. And that's what you almost have to be motivated in, that to go, I'm going to show this guy, and I'm going to let him know this bothered me once I do show him down the road and go, well, you almost ruined this whole thing. What an idiot you were. You almost drafted somebody else, and look at what I've done and our team has done. That's what you got to be the end goal, end game kind of looking forward to.
All right, it's time to wrap this up.
I'm
Before
interested.
we do that, we have to pay off the tees. Here's what I know, and this is the ultimate multitasking. This is text message exchanges with sources regarding Russell Wilson.
So you weren't listening to me, is what you were saying.
I wasn't listening to
Thank you.
But someone contacted me with some information, so I had to go back and forth and play the game a little bit. But here's what I can now report, and this isn't on PFT yet, but it will be soon enough. Russell Wilson is not going to hold out. He will be there every day that the doors to the facility are open. They were told in late January that the deadline is April 15, so this isn't something new.
Right.
And it is a very simple proposition. Get a contract done, or he is going to go year to year under the franchise tag. Now, there are factors that need to be considered when we get into a long-term contract, and it isn't going to simply be pay me what I would make under the franchise tag over the next 4 years. The issue of quarterback contract escalation. And we've talked in the past that you can have a term in there that guarantees you a percentage of the salary cap as the cap goes up and up and up. No team has done that yet, but players have tried to get it. How the cap will increase, what will happen under a new CBA, how the money will go up with legalized gambling, how the money will go up with new national TV deals. These are all things that are projections at this point, but I think Russell Wilson is going to want to have that accounted for in some way in this contract. It requires a level of creativity that Aaron Rodgers wanted in Green Bay, and the Packers wouldn't give it to him, and he eventually shrugged his shoulders and signed a normal deal. The question is, will the Seahawks do an unconventional deal, or will they let Russell Wilson follow what is a largely unconventional approach of 1 year at a time under the franchise tag? And I think if Wilson is trying to take all these factors and turn them into something quantifiable, it's going to be less likely that the Seahawks are going to bite.
Yeah, no, again, Russell Wilson did the Seattle Seahawks a solid the last time he negotiated his contract. He signed a team-friendly deal. He did not hold their feet over the fire to be the highest-paid guy or top 2 or 3 in all of football, which he certainly had the right to do at the time. I would say this. If I'm the Seahawks, and I know I already said this, I would sign him to a long-term deal and get out in front of it right now, because the year-to-year thing is, I think, a franchise killer. It's a locker room killer at the quarterback position. Other positions, you can get away with it. But we just saw an experiment with the Washington Redskins with Kirk Cousins, who did the same thing, and there was a disconnect. There's a disconnect between the players and the quarterback in the locker room. The coaches and the quarterback have a disconnect there. And you question how all in or emotionally invested the quarterback is in the organization over the long haul in the future, when it's a year-to-year thing and the quarterback is going, I might not be here next year. I don't know where this is going to go. So to me, that's where it can really play an issue with the football team. And I don't see Pete Carroll or John Schneider, who I have a ton of respect for, wanting to do that to their locker room or have to answer those questions all offseason for 3 consecutive offseasons. So if I'm then, get this done, make him the highest paid quarterback in all of football, make it a long-term deal so the yearly cap hit is not a crushing number. And I think that would be the best way to approach it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and we'll see if they can work something out. But the deadline is clear. It's the start of the offseason program. And I think Russell Wilson, if nothing else, is a man of his word. And if he says that's the deadline, that's the deadline. And it's not going to be on April 16, oh, Russell, we changed our mind, we'll agree to it. Now, that will be intriguing. If they do all of a sudden cave the day after, will he stick to his guns, or will he say, okay, if you're going to give me what I wanted anyway, so be it? But I think that he really is standing on principle here. He's given them a fair opportunity to get to where he wants to be, and now we'll see whether or not they get there. All right, we've gotten to the point where we got to end this. Chris, taping a new episode of Chris Simms Unbuttoned later today. Check that out wherever you can find podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of PFT Live. Chris, great stuff as always. We'll see you on Thursday.
See you, Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.